I want to welcome you to the broadcast. Thanks for joining. I need to double check one real quick item here. I want to make sure that the audio is working okay, and I'm going to probably use a different audio feature. So thanks for joining. I need to, hopefully you can still hear me okay. Let's see, let me fix this here. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Let's see here. Okay, hopefully you can hear me okay. And I am going to put the video back on here. So let's testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2. Okay, I think we are broadcasting now. Hopefully you can hear me okay. It looks like the microphone's going. And all right. Well, thanks for joining the webinar. My name is John Mayfield, and I am using my Zoom meeting, so it's a little different setup than what I normally do. We are broadcasting live on Facebook, and I'm going to make sure and see if we have any attendees here. So you can, I have the chat box open, so you are welcome to, if you want to type in a message, you can do that as well. It looks like we've got a couple of folks on the line, so are watching. If you could, I'd like for you maybe to type in a chat message. I can make certain that everything's broadcasting loud and clear and that you can hear me okay. There's no feedback or anything like that. So we'll see if the chat feature is working. And so I, first of all, want to say thanks for your support with Global Real Estate School. I appreciate that. And I apologize, we have not had, I see everything's working great. Thank you, Casey, appreciate that. I apologize, I've not had any live streaming sessions since really right after Thanksgiving. I, unfortunately, or fortunately, we put our home up for sale. We sold our home very quickly and we had to be out by the 1st of January. So my studio and everything was kind of in utter chaos back at the old house. So we moved in our new home, and I'm here in our new home. I'm upstairs in an office upstairs that I have. And so long story short, I won't bore you with all the details, but we just had a couple of issues come up. So I've not been able to get my office set up downstairs in the basement area as we had in the other house. And then I've been traveling. I was in Egypt and some other things. So it's been a crazy 2 months. So I apologize, but I'm back ready to do the, and I see Jeff there. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that kind comment. So anyway, we're ready to roll, and I'm going to I'll come back and forth with the video camera. but I'll probably be sharing and showing my iPad. We're going to kind of jump over there and do some things today. So anyway, it's good to be back on live streaming. And don't forget, you have all of the live streaming is available for you to watch at any time in your course library. Let me just kind of see if I can jump over there now. I'm going to see here. Here we go. So I am going to pull this right up here and bring this up so you can kind of take a look at this. This is, we're going to go over chapter 11 tonight, and that's actually not what I wanted to share. Let me do a new share here. And probably, let me stop this. And again, my apologies, I'm kind of using a new system here and I need to pull this window up. So I'll pull this down. We should be good to go here. So okay, so I'm going to do a new share here, and I should be able to show you what I want to. There we go. Alrighty. So you should be able to see this particular window that I'm sharing here. I'm logged into the course as the administrator, so I have a lot more different courses in here. But anyway, I wanted to show you when you go over to the Missouri practice or the Missouri pre-license course, you'll notice right here there's a little button that says additional references. The textbook is located for each school that we have, or each state that we have, is located right here. And so you can pull that up. There's some other additional resources here that you can pull up as well. So I just wanted to point that out. I also wanted to point out, and I'll go over here to the modules, that at any time, we'll go into personal property here. And you probably won't see this because I'm going to have to share a different screen. Sorry about that. Let me go back over here. That's the one thing on Zoom's a pretty interesting program, but so I have to bring you over here and share a different screen. Just take a second. There we go. So as I went into this chapter 2 here, I'm going to just hit yes, we'll resume where we're at. I also just wanted to point out that under the resources for every module, you can also go right in and you can download or pull up the book for each chapter. So 2 ways you can get that. You can get it right here in the resources tab. What I did under the resources tab is I actually have just the chapter for whatever module you're working on. So in this case, it's chapter 2. You would just have the chapter 2 in the resources tab. And I'm going to exit out of this, and we'll have to jump back over here and share. And sorry about that. It's kind of getting the hang of it. Let's see. I closed that window, but if you go into the additional resources tab, you will basically have the entire textbook there. One of the things I need to, I don't know if I just lost my, really? I think I just lost. I don't know what happened there, but I have no idea what happened.
Okay, I hope I'm back. I hope you're still there. My apologies. I don't know what I did there. So I'm going to go back and see. It looks like we've got a few people that are still there. Are Can you all see me okay now and hear me? Hopefully I'm back where you can hear and see me. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for that. My apologies about that. I think I know what I did wrong. So anyway, we're going to get back over here we'll get started. And just wanted to very quickly again remind you that you can get the entire book from the additional resources in your dashboard. You have to launch the pre-license course, but remember that each time you're in each module, you will also have access to the specific chapters. Okay, so you can access those there. So anyway, all the materials there, and I'm going to go over chapter 11 right now, listings. Again, I'm using a different platform. I normally have been using kind of complicated, but I use a platform that live streams through YouTube, which we're doing right now as well. And it works very well, but since I was doing this from my office upstairs, I thought I would try Zoom. And I know what I've done wrong, so hopefully this won't happen again. I just need to make sure all my windows are up. So I know we've got 4 or 5 folks that are on the call. Thanks for joining, and I appreciate that. But let's get started. I'm going to take my video off right now, and so that I can concentrate on just going over the material. So everyone should be able to see this chapter 11. We're going to talk a little bit about fiduciary obligations and listings. And now, if you are not on chapter 11, don't panic, because this will still be good for you to go over. Just take some good notes, and I think you'll be good to go in that respect. Okay. So I am going to, there we go. I am going to share a different screen, and this right here. Still chapter 11, so. All right, so let's kind of go through some things. This is going to be a very important piece that you need to know for the exam. They will ask a lot of questions over this specific chapter, so I think it's always good to kind of know the information here as well. So what do we have when we have a listing? Anytime you go out to get a listing as a real estate professional, there's a couple of things you need to remember, and this is very important for the exam. Number one, the listing is between the broker and the client or the seller, okay? So you're gonna see, I recently took the exam in Oklahoma, or for the Oklahoma, we were just approved in Oklahoma, and they love to ask the question, and they will word it really tricky to where you want to say, oh, that wouldn't be that big of a deal. And it is, because listings are between the broker and the client. So for example, you might see a test question that said, John went out and listed Bob and Mary's home. Bob and Mary are his best friends. You know, they've been friends for years, and they list their house with John because they really like him. And after all, they're best friends, right? And then John gets mad the next day after he gets this listing. The next morning, gets mad at his broker, leaves. What happens to the listing, Bob and Mary's listing? And the answer is it's still a valid listing. Why? Because listings are between the broker and the client. Now, the other thing you need to make sure that you understand and you're aware of is that a buyer's contract is the same as a listing contract with a seller. In fact, in Missouri, when they come to audit you, and I was just recently audited by the Missouri Real Estate Commission, everything went fine, so which is good. As a school administrator and teacher, you want to hope that your audit goes well. But when they audit your records, they treat a buyer's agency agreement the same way that we treat a seller's agency agreement or listing contract. Okay, so what I want to kind of make sure that everybody understands is, even though we're talking about listings in chapter 11, and predominantly we're referencing sellers, okay, just keep in mind that you could also have a buyer's agency agreement. Same thing as a listing contract with a seller, it's just a buyer's agency agreement. So I don't want you to, they both are the same. You can have a listing contract with a seller to sell their home. You can have a buyer's contract with a buyer to help them find a property. They're both agency contracts. And in chapter 10, we talked a lot about agency, and we talked about that fiduciary obligation, COALB, care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. Very, very important. So I just kind of want to make sure we're all on the same page, even though we're referencing sellers a lot here in chapter 11, could also be a buyer. They could throw that on the real estate exam, but just simply use the term as a buyer. And just keep in mind, it's an agency contract. But the first thing you need to know and remember and write this down, I guarantee you will see this on the exam. That contract, that agency contract, is between the broker and the client. Okay, so make sure that you keep that in mind. Okay, so let's take a look, and I'm going to be able to do some drawing here. Get myself a drink of water. And so we're on chapter 11, and just going to kind of again reiterate that a listing agreement is a contract. It's an agency. It creates, I should circle that word, it creates this agency relationship. So remember, we could have a broker, and then you have the client. And this could be a seller, or as we just discussed, it could be a buyer, right? You know, you could have a property manager with a someone who owns property. Again, that's an agency relationship. Now, what's kind of odd in this situation is you have the salesperson who goes out and usually enters into this, you know, they find the listing agreement and they enter into the listing contract with the salesperson. But who is the agreement actually between? It's actually between the broker and the client. So keep that in mind. Now, the other thing that's very important here is that it creates what is called a special agency. A special agency. It's created for one specific purpose. Okay, that's why it's called a special agency. It's just for a specific purpose. Find a buyer for my home. If it's a listing contract, if it's a buyer's agency agreement, it's help me find this type of property that I'm looking for. Okay, doesn't carry any kind of limited power of attorney where, you know, that would allow you to do certain acts for the principal. It's just a special agency agreement. So make sure that you remember that. Okay. So, and here we go again, right here. This is something you need to highlight, make sure you understand, write this down, because you will see this on the test. All listings are between the broker and the seller or the principal. Okay, now, sometimes, I probably should bring this up so we can just talk about it very quickly. Sometimes, this is the broker, and this would be the client. This could also be called the principal sometimes, okay? The principal could be referred to as a client. The principal could be referred to as a seller, remember? Could be referred to as a buyer. Could be referred to as an owner if it's a property management contract. But again, all of the, when we have these types of agency relationships here, this creates that care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. Okay. In other words, you owe the broker, and even if their salesperson owes this fiduciary obligation to their client. Very, very important. Years ago, I'm going to go back. I got my license in 1978 at the age of 18, so you can calculate and figure out how old I am if you want to do that. But I had my real estate license for a long time. And back in the early 80s, late 70s, agency was the typical way we practiced real estate. Was you had just draw this out here. You had a seller, or the broker, and you had a seller here, okay? Just as we see here, and I'll take my video off so we can kind of concentrate on the screen here. You had salespeople who worked down here, and you had a buyer. Now, normally, this was a listing agreement. This is back before we had a lot of buyers agency was around. The buyer was deemed a third party, okay? But what happens in the typical real estate transaction? The buyer calls the office, the salesperson then takes the call and shows them the property. So they're showing them this property. Now, who's the agency agreement between? It's between the seller and the broker. This buyer out here, who's the third party, also referred to as a customer, because the seller's the client. Who did the buyer believe? I mean, they call the salesperson tells them about this home, goes out, shows them the house. Who does the buyer believe the agent is working for? The buyer really all along thinks the salesperson is their agent. And what happened was, when lawsuits started coming about back in the 1980s, this agency relationship had always been on the books. It had always been there. And so attorneys started saying, when these lawsuits would come up, take, for example, you purchase a home and you move in, you have all these problems with it, and you're thinking, wait a minute, John Mayfield, our agent, should have disclosed this to us. And so they sue who? John Mayfield, the buyer, because I'm their agent. But look on the screen there. The buyer is really just a customer or a third party. So these savvy attorneys, very highly legal savvy attorneys, they knew the law, and they would say, wait a minute, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you're just a customer. You didn't have any kind of written agreement with John Mayfield. John had a written agreement with the seller. John was actually an agent for the seller. You're just a third party out in the cold, basically. And John didn't have any obligation or fiduciary duties to disclose to you or use due care to make sure you get an inspection and all these other things. And so buyers were going to court trying to sue the agent, and lo and behold, they would get a real lesson on the way agency worked. And so it was kind of a bad situation. So what happened in the mid to late 1980s is that you had buyers who were coming out and saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, we can represent you as a buyer's agent, and we'll collect our commission from the seller, from the other agency. And we'll talk about that tonight because it gets a little complicated, but I think you need to know how it works. And so people started representing buyers, and then all of a sudden, this whole buyer's agency and seller's agency and all this kind of exploded, and now it's just kind of common practice today. And so we'll kind of walk into this. Chapter 10 goes into this a little bit more, but I'd like to kind of dive into it and explain it. I think you can handle it and learn from it. But what you need to understand from what we're talking about here, we'll go back to this first page, is when you enter into a listing agreement, even though you're the salesperson, you go out, you get it in writing, you get it signed. that agreement's between the broker and the client. Okay, so let's go back over here to, you know what, I think, oh yeah, I think we're good to go there. I thought maybe I failed to open up that window. Okay, so I think you understand that. And we'll kind of go into this a little bit more. So, this is just some basic things here that you need to understand. And I don't think there's anything major here. Seems like I saw this on the test. I've seen this before, but it's called a safety clause or a protective period clause. Protective period clause right there. Okay. Now, what is a safety clause or a protective period clause? When I used to teach live classes at the junior college, and then I had a classroom in my office, but I always use this analogy because I thought it was kind of fun. But let's just say you have a listing, okay, and you've had it for 6 months, and on like 2 days before it expires, you get somebody who looks at it, they're very interested. Now, don't ask me why that happens in our business, but it does, okay? So you've had no activity, nothing going on this property. The sellers are kind of getting a little bit irritated with you and your company. And lo and behold, 2 days before it expires, you get somebody that wants to look at it. They look at it, they love it, but they want to think about it. Well, you follow up with them. They unfortunately are not ready to do anything, and your listing expires, or maybe it's 1 day before. And so the sellers are at Kroger in the produce department looking at lettuce and tomatoes and the other vegetables that they need to purchase. And these people come up and said, "Hey, I think you're the folks that live over on such and such street." And they say, "Yeah, that's us." And they said, "We looked at your house with John Mayfield. We really liked it. It's a lovely home. And we're thinking about the house, but we haven't made a decision yet." And the sellers, your sellers, say, "Well, our listing expires tomorrow. Just wait 2 days and we can sell it to you and we won't have to pay the commission. We'll give you a better deal." Well, what this safety clause or protective period clause says is that the seller cannot sell the property to anyone you've shown it to for whatever length of time you put in the listing agreement. I normally put 90 days, but you need to check with your broker and see what they like for you to put in. But you do have to register the names. There are some things you have to do for that protective period clause to go into effect. So in other words, if my listing expires, I'd need to provide the seller, the client, with a list of names of people who looked at the property and say, you can't sell it to any of these folks for 90 days or you owe me a commission. And so that's what the protective period clause or the safety clause protects you from the client trying to sell it to someone you've shown the property to for a certain length of time after the listing expires. Again, you do need to register names with the owner, but they probably won't ask you that specific part of the question on the test. Now, that does not apply if the seller lists the property with another broker, okay? So if those people, my sellers, turn around and list their property with XYZ Realty and my buyers go to XYZ Realty and buy the home, I'm out of luck, okay? And the sellers do not owe me anything because they relisted their property with another firm. So I would know what the protective period clause is or the safety clause. I think that's very important for you to know. This is very important here. Listings are not transferable. In other words, if I sold my real estate company, it couldn't transfer my listings to the new owner. I actually sold my company back in 2006. As I mentioned, I started my practice in 1978. I took over my mom's office, and in 2006, I sold my company went to work for a bank, and I won't bore you with all of those details, signed a non-compete clause. But when I sold my company, I was just selling my name, the goodwill with my company, and the reputation, and the I did have around 40 agents, but they could all leave at any time, and so but the listings had to be renegotiated with the new firm, so I couldn't transfer those listings. So you cannot sell the listings as well, and that kind of tells you that right there. I have to plug my pencil up in a little bit longer here. So there are 4 different types of listings we want to talk about here. And these you're going to need to know for the exam. So let's make sure that you understand those. The first one is an open listing, okay? An open listing. And for some reason, let me see if I can find out why my pen's not working. Shows it's connected, so. I have no idea why that's not working, but we will try to plug it in again, and I may need to just undo my Bluetooth. Sorry about that. I'll turn my Bluetooth off and I'll turn it back on. See if that'll get my pen back up. I like to draw because I think visually it always helps if you can do that. I have been looking at the new, there we go. Let's see if that's going to work here. At the new, well, we'll just have to kind of improvise here, and I won't, sorry about that. I would love to be able to draw some more. So we have the open listing. There's 4 different types of listings. We'll go with that one first. An open listing basically is when the seller says, I'll give you a listing, but if I sell it, I won't owe you a commission, and I want to be able to give my listing to other brokers as well. So with an open listing, just to kind of talk about this a little bit, and I do some work in France for a friend of mine, and in France, they actually had, that's how most of the offices work over there. They just give out open listings. And now the company I work for, we work mainly exclusive listings, but many of the other agencies over there will give an open listing. And it's interesting. I was in doing laundry one day in the laundromat there, and one of the ladies there I met in the laundromat had an apartment she wanted to sell, and we were talking, and I told her we were talking about getting an exclusive agreement on her apartment, and she wanted to just give an open listing. And I explained to her why we did not work off an open agreement, that we wanted an exclusive right to sell agreement, and she couldn't understand that. She thought it was better to give as many brokers in the area as possible a listing agreement, and didn't understand the whole concept. So in the United States, you will find that most areas work off an exclusive right to sell listing. There are some places in Missouri, up in the northeastern part of Missouri and northwestern part of Missouri, they do a lot of open listings. It's very common to see open listings. You cannot put an open listing in the multiple listing service, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, I saw a test question, so write this down. I'm not supposed to talk about what I saw, but let's just say, here's a good test question, okay? I don't remember what I saw, but here's a good test question that you might want to write down. regarding open listings. What's one disadvantage of an open listing? Or the question may be worded, why would a person not want to give an open listing to a broker? And think about that for a minute. The answer was or is because I may not be as motivated to try and sell that property because there's more risk involved. I'm kind of giving you this in a nutshell, okay? So in other words, if I'm a seller, I could give an open listing to as many brokers as I wanted to. Whoever sells it keeps the commission. If I sell it as the seller, I get to keep the commission, okay? So I apologize, it's a little warm up here. We have had our fireplace going earlier, and I'm up in the top part of the house, and so it's a little bit warm up here. So, the answer is you might not be as motivated to try to work on that property because you're not guaranteed a commission. As an open listing, it's the least desirable type of listing. So write that down. With an exclusive agency, it's a little bit better. However, the seller could still sell the property and not pay you a commission. So let's think about this for a second. The problem with an exclusive agency agreement would be this scenario. I go out and get an exclusive agency agreement from a seller. I run an ad spend some money running ads in the newspaper, or people see it online on my website. They call me up, I tell them about the property, they want to drive by, or even, in today's era with the internet, you just see it on Zillow or Realtor.com or on your website, and they say, there's a cool house over on 717 Smith Street, let's go take a look at it. They don't even call you, they just drive by the outside of the house, and they're driving by real slow, and the seller's out cutting the grass, and they come back by again real slow, and the seller stops and waves at them, and perhaps they enter into a conversation. They say, yeah, we saw your home online, we'd be interested in looking at it. We see you're asking $250,000, and the seller goes, oh, that's only if you go through the real estate office. If you go through me, I'm only asking $220,000, $225,000, because I don't have to pay a commission. They've got one of those there exclusive agency agreements, giving you kind of a funny dialect verbiage for that. And the buyer says, oh, $225,000. They go in and look at it, love it, sign a contract, and the seller calls you up and says, hey, I've already sold my home. You can come pick your sign up. We're closing next Wednesday. It's a cash deal. See the risk you run into there with an open listing or an exclusive agency? I mean, that's just how things work. And you may have never known those people literally found out about that house from your website, or because you put it on in the MLS and it went to Zillow or wherever, Realtor.com. So, looking at those two types of listings where the seller could sell it or another agency could sell it, and you do not receive any commission, it's not a very attractive commission for you, type of an agency agreement for you to enter into. So let's look at the third type, exclusive right to sell. It's really the best type of listing agreement you can have. Why? Because it doesn't matter if the seller sells it, doesn't matter if the buyer, if another agency sells it, you as the listing agent get the commission, and then you can split it up however you want. But that's the best type of an agreement you can have, is exclusive right to sell. So on the exam, they're going to have questions that will be, as I mentioned earlier, the open listing. You're not going to be very motivated to try to work on that. That's one disadvantage, right? They're going to have exclusive agency listing questions. And a lot of these, I see the questions will be a narrative type of a problem where they will mention the buyers and the sellers and the agent and the salesperson, and you really have to read them 2 or 3 times. But just understand this: an open listing, the seller can give the listing to as many brokers as they want. Whoever sells it keeps the commission. With an open listing, if the seller sells it as well, pays no one a commission. Exclusive agency gives you a little more protection, because if any other broker sells it, you get paid your commission. But there's still that loophole for the seller where they can sell it on their own. And if they do that, they owe you no commission. And I gave you a great example of how that can be very dangerous in today's environment with the internet and with properties online and with people being able to find the property. And most people want to drive by the outside. They could drive by, enter into a conversation with the seller, the client, and the seller tells them they don't have to go through your office, sells it to them, and you're out in the cold. And literally, the buyers found out about it through your efforts and your work by putting it online. So still a little more protection, not a good listing agreement. Best type of agreement you can get: exclusive right to sell. Doesn't matter if the seller sells it or another agency sells it, you get to keep the commission. Okay, so those are the different types of agreements there. Keep in mind, net listings are illegal in Missouri, but here's where you may see the question on the test. Wants to know what a net listing is. It's when the seller says to you as the agent or broker, look, I just want X number of dollars. Anything over that amount you can keep. Okay, so that's how you're going to see it on the test. If you see anything where there's not a fixed commission rate, but the broker gets to earn anything in excess of a certain amount, it's a net listing. Again, those are illegal in Missouri. I have a license in Florida, and believe it or not, net listings are actually legal in Florida, but they're not legal in Missouri. So just remember, it's when it's in excess or above. Okay, so I'm gonna just turn the video off for a second. Taking the listing, you're going to want to do what's called a CMA, a competitive market analysis. And it's not an appraisal. It's just going to help you get an idea of what a property might be worth, looking at active, sold, and expired listings. Shouldn't be too high or too low. The ideal price would be similar to what homes have already sold in the neighborhood. Okay, let's take a couple. Oh, gosh, I wish this was working. I don't know if my pen has just went kaput on me or what, but I may try something else here. Just 1 second. May need to change the tip because I have not changed that for a while. We'll see if this works. I'm hoping that might be the problem. Technology, we have to love it, don't we? When it works good, it's wonderful. But when it's not working, there we go. Maybe my tip was bad. All right, let's try this here. So you're going to see some of these questions, and how much will a seller net if he sells his farm for $249 at 7%, $750,000, $750 closing cost. So I'm going to come over here, and we will draw this out. So again, we're going to come back over here. I want to know how much will the seller net if he sells his farm for $249. That's what he's selling it for. 7% commission, $750 closing costs. Make sure that's right. $249. Okay. So let's come back over here. And we've talked a lot about it with our math problems, these T formulas. Remember, this is part, total, this is percent. Well, all we have to do is plug these three items in here. We need to find out, it wants to know how much is the seller going to net. And these are closing costs, right? Well, we need to find out how much the commission rate is. So I'm going to put 249,000, which is the bigger number on the bottom, because we're solving for part, or in this case, part is the commission, right? So the 249 is the sales price. So remember that anytime we have, and this is 7%, and I always like to have you convert that to decimal, so you're going to move that over two places, so it's 0.07. So remember, whenever you have the bottom two, we would look for our math sign tells us to multiply. So 249,000 times 0.07 equals $17,430. Now this, remember, is the commission. So here we take 249 minus 17,430. So I'm going to do 249 minus 17,430 gives me 231,570. And now I'm going to subtract $750 in closing cost. And that gives me $23,082, $820. Pardon me. 230,000, I'm looking at that, $820. Okay, 230,820. So let's double check. 249 times 0.07 equals 17,430. So I'm going to take 249,000, subtract 17,430, and now I'm going to subtract $750, and that gives me $230,820. Okay, good. All right, let's go look at this next problem. Now, this moves it around a little bit. How much will the farm need to be listed for to net 249,000 based on all of the same information? Well, in this case, 249,000 is what the seller wants to net. Okay? The previous question said, how much will they net if it sells for 249? So in this case, your seller's saying, I want to net $249,000. Well, we work the T problem, and this is the only time we make a change to the T problem, okay? So the first thing we want to do is we want to take the 249,000 and we want to add our closing costs. And that's going to give us $249,750. Now, we have the 7% commission, right? Whenever you have a seller net problem, you have to take 100% and subtract the 7%, okay? So in this case, that gives us 93%. Or when we move the decimal over two places, it's 0.93. Now, this, remember, is part, and this is total. Well, when you think about this problem, they want to know what should the house be listed for to net this figure. So this is not going to be on the bottom because it's now the smaller number. This is the only time we flip everything. And the reason we're flipping it is because we're solving or looking for the bigger number, the list price. Remember, list price will always be bigger than the net. Okay? So you just kind of have to put this in memory, and it's not going to be that challenging when you work through a few of these. Take your, what do they want to net? Add the closing cost. Now, you would also subtract refunds, but we don't have a refund here, so we're not going to worry about it. Add closing costs, subtract refunds, and then plug this number into the top because it's now the smaller number. So if I take $249,750 and I divide it by 0.93, I get, change colors here, I get 268,548 and 39 cents. You won't have to worry about that on the exam. They won't have it down to the penny. Okay, so don't worry about that. Now remember why we divided, because we have the top one and one on the bottom. So our math tells us to divide. This number always goes in the calculator first, the divide button second, and then you put this in, you'll get your answer. Now let's think about this problem for a second. And I don't want you to get too stressed out here. This number right here, this $249,750 is really 93% of this figure when you look at that mathematically. That's why we have to take the 100% and subtract the commission, because we're really working off this 0.93 or 93%. So when you look at this from a mathematical standpoint, just tell yourself this number that's on the top is 93% of something. And to get that, you then take 249,750, divide it by 0.93, okay? Now, I would always double check my math. So I would take the 268,548 times 0.07 gives me $18,798. $268,548 times 0.07 equals 18,798. So 268,548 minus 18, excuse me, gives me that 249,750, and when I subtract the 750, I get 249,000. Now let me kind of take a quick drink of water, and I'll bring my video camera on, and I see a question that came in, so I see a question that came in from Jeff, and I'll answer that here in a second. My apologies for not catching that. Don't let these questions kind of freak you out. This is the only time the T problem gets turned around, but here's what I will always remind you to do. you can always, what I say, what I refer to as go in the back door, okay? So you're going to have answer A, B, C, D, and let's say that's 100,000. This one's 125. This one's 175. And this one's maybe 205. You know what I would do? I would just, like, if you couldn't figure out how to do it, I would just start plugging these in, 205 times 0.07. It's going to give you your commission rate, and then subtract the commission and subtract the closing cost. And what do you get? Whoops, that didn't work, so cross that out. In fact, it was way off, so I would drop down and try B. That didn't work, try A. Bingo. In other words, just sometimes I see the math problems and I can't figure out how to do it. Let's just face it, when you're in there for the exam day, things can stress out and it gets a little crazy. But I know how to work it backwards. So I just take each choice. I've done that before, and I just take each answer and start running it that way until it fits, till it works. So, you'll have plenty of time that you can do that. And I would just skip over that one and come back to it. If you say, look, I think I know how to do this one, but I'm going to have to go in through the back door. That's going to take me a little time. Just skip it and go on to the next one, then come back, and maybe things in your mind will be kind of leveled out and you'll figure out and know how to do it the other way. So that's one option you can do. So Jeff wanted to know, any chance you can expand on why net listings are illegal? In the past, I made so much money on aircraft, both buying and selling in the past. So interesting. Yes, in Florida, they actually allow you to have net listings. And, I guess just some states feel like the seller may not know exactly, that the seller could be taken advantage of. So, like, one of the things, and this is a test question as well, in Missouri, you have to have a specified commission rate. So, commissions are negotiable. So you could say my commission is 12% or 15%. But unfortunately, I think the big reason, to answer your question, is the regulating agencies believe that clients could be taken advantage of. So always have to have a specified interest or commission rate. Gosh, it's 9:02, so I see here that we lost a little bit of ground there from some of the technical difficulties. So thanks for kind of bearing with me there. Couple of other things I just want to go over very quickly with you. You need to know how a listing can be terminated. We have those here: abandonment, operation of law, fulfillment when it's sold. Those are all very important. So again, make sure you understand the different types of listing agreements that are there. We have these in the flashcards for you. I have some good questions that you can go over as well. I do want to remind everybody that the practice exams that are in your course review modules, they have, I've been adding lots of questions to those. So I definitely go out and take a look at those questions as well in the practice exams. I do want to mention that our pass rates have been really good. We got our pass rates this last week, and we're still way up there. We had one month that was 87%. I think we had 73. This month was 67. Dropped a little bit, but we still have, that's still way above the first-time pass rate for the state average for many of the other schools around the state. So, I'm naturally, I want 100%. That's my goal. But we've been anywhere from 67 to 87 And so I kind of hate to tinker with anything because things are going very well. But those practice exams have lots of questions that are not in your course library. So be sure and go through those. Please keep in mind, I'm always here. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I'm just a phone call away. I'm more than happy to help you out if you need any help. I appreciate your business, and we will pick up with another study session next week. So I'll be sure and notify you about that as well. And hopefully I have all these little bugs worked out. We'll probably still be up here in my office upstairs, but hopefully we'll have our studio set back up downstairs where we can have the board and things functioning down there. So have a great weekend. Keep studying hard. Reach out to me if you have any questions, and thanks for watching. Thank you.